Welcome back. If you're planning to travel by plane anytime soon, you want to listen up. Last week, U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg announced new rules for airlines that are designed to benefit travelers when their flights are canceled or delayed for an extended period of time. National travel journalist Peter Greenberg, one of our favorite guests, is kind enough to join us once again to go over those rules. Peter, thank you for being with us.
Happy to be with you.
So I want to start with the delays and cancellations. Secretary Buttigieg put this out, and I just happened to notice Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Chris Murphy, the senator from Connecticut, retweeted the news and said, when does this go into effect? I'm currently in 2.5 hours into a delay. So he was hoping immediately, but that's not the case. Tell us how it's going to work, Peter.
No, it's not the case. It's not going to go into effect for at least 3 or 4 months. But let's backtrack for a second. The rules that were announced by the Transportation Secretary, really, most of them are already on the books now. They've been on the books for years, and here's how they read. If an airline cancels your flight for any reason whatsoever, you're already entitled to a full and immediate refund back to your original form of purchase. What the Secretary did is he enhanced those rules to include delays. So now, if your domestic flight is delayed by more than 3 hours, you're also entitled to that refund immediately. And same thing on an international flight, it goes up to 6 hours. You may remember back in COVID, what the airlines did is they didn't exactly volunteer that original rule, and they steered passengers against their better judgment into getting vouchers or trip credits, which essentially meant they were giving the airlines an interest-free loan. All that ends now in the next 3 or 4 months when that rule kicks in. And they've also extended it to other things like baggage. If you're paying $40 to check a bag and the bag doesn't arrive on your flight, you should be entitled, and now you will be entitled to an immediate refund of what you paid to check that bag. And even something as silly as the Wi-Fi, if you pay for Wi-Fi on the plane and it's not working, you get a refund on that too. Now, we're just getting started. What the Transportation Secretary also announced is basically about full disclosure and full transparency in posting airfares. Right now, if you go online, the first airfare you see is sort of like a teaser fare. It represents like basic economy where you have no rights, and that's not the fare you're going to pay, right? By the time you get to check out, it's ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. It might be 3 times the original quoted fare. Under the new rules, they have to post the full fare that you're going to pay at the time they post it for the first time. That will help you out a lot, at least in terms of budgeting and knowing what you're in for.
Well, let's break down those two different issues. The refunds for the delays and cancellations. One of the things I saw as people were commenting on this is exactly what you said, is that people, especially people who weren't maybe seasoned travelers, falling for things like a voucher or having to go online, one of those dreaded chats with AI somewhere trying to figure out how to do it. Do you think that this will actually accomplish the goal of making this seamless?
Well, it's definitely a step in the right direction because nobody wants to go through the draconian gift card regime of a trip credit or a voucher. If you paid for it, the money should come back to you immediately. And under this new rule, you'll get that money back within 7 days without having to go file all the paperwork or go online to talk to somebody who maybe doesn't even exist.
And now you mentioned the bags that don't make it to their destination, but I know a lot of our viewers were asking, what about other things? What if I have to then get a hotel for the night because the trip was canceled or my rental car got more expensive? Is there a way to go after some of those ancillary costs as well?
Right now, each airline has its own mission statement about what they will and won't do or what they will effort to do. Remember, the DOT promised us after that terrible Southwest meltdown back at Christmas of 22, they would come up with a definitive, comprehensive airline passenger bill of rights. We're still waiting to see that. This is a step in the right direction, but it's nowhere near what's needed.
Now let's talk about the junk fees, as they've been called. President Biden has talked a lot about this in this industry and others. As they target those costs and the advertising, how do you foresee advertising changing for travel? As someone who watches it so closely, I mean, if you see a Delta ad, is it going to have to literally list the different levels of service on every ad, and if it costs you for a seat and for a bag, or will they start to get more vague and say go somewhere else to find out the details?
No, they can't under these rules. They're going to have to post the exact fare. It's no different than what's going on now in the hotel business with those dreaded resort fees, right? They quote you a room rate, and then they don't necessarily disclose that you're going to spend $40, $50, $60 a night for a quote-unquote resort fee, which is a clever way to raise the fare without having to pay the taxes. So they're going to have to do the same thing now with the airline business. It may make your life a little more complicated to do the math, but at least you get to do the math, and you get to do it up front and not get sticker shock 5 or 10 minutes later when you realize that's not what you were paying at all.
All right, let's talk about the summer travel season. I'm a summer guy. I see that temperature slowly going up. I get excited for that time off and to be outside. What do you foresee this year? Will it be busy? And what are going to be some of the hot places, Peter?
Well, let me give you the bad news first. It's going to be more than busy for another reason. It's not just our demand is bigger than ever, and more people are going to be traveling than ever before, at least in recent memory. It goes back to Boeing. The Boeing assembly lines are slow to a crawl, if not a stop. They have not been able to deliver the planes that they were contracted to do by the airlines, which means the airlines don't have enough planes to support the schedule they were publishing for the summer. So you're seeing airlines like Southwest and United and others have to restructure their entire summer flying schedule. And what does that mean? More flights being consolidated, some routes being canceled, which means if you thought the planes were full last summer, fasten your seatbelt. They're going to be even more full, if that's even physically possible, this summer. And then the bad news, of course, law of supply and demand. If the planes are full, the demand is strong, airfares have nowhere to go but up. So if you want to fly this summer, keep in mind that airfares are going up right now about 4% a week. For every day you delay, you're going to be paying more.
Gas prices up as well over the last week, so it really could be a catch-22, whichever direction you want to go. Where do you foresee Americans going? Last year you were talking about how expensive it was to get to Europe and some of the other big places. What's your prediction for what's going to be happening this summer?
Well, it's going to be more expensive to get to Europe, as we already know. We're projecting airfares going up about 10% over last year for international flights. Up until the Boeing fiasco, we were actually forecasting that domestic fares could go down by 14%. Now, all bets are off. It's going to be an expensive summer any way you look at it.
And tell me about tips for people. If people are just now thinking, maybe a lot of people already have their plans locked in, but if they don't have plans locked in, what would you say they should be thinking about?
Follow the strength of the U.S. dollar against foreign currencies overseas, meaning think about South America, in particular Argentina. Think about South Africa. Think about Turkey. Think about Thailand, where the U.S. dollar is so strong. The Turkish lira has been devalued so many times that it's a complete buyer's market. Now, the airfare may be more expensive to get there than last year, but the actual cost of doing business there, a tube of toothpaste, a bus ride, a hamburger, whatever you want, is going to be paying what the locals pay, which with the U.S. dollar exchange rate becomes a huge buyer's market for us. And that applies to some of those countries I just mentioned.
Well, because we've had you on the show a number of times, I love petergreenberg.com. I check out a lot of your blog posts, and I was unhappy to find that the cheapest beer you could find at the airport was in Portland, Oregon, $4.33 for the pour. That's really far from here, Peter. I need something a little closer. LaGuardia is the most expensive. That's a more convenient airport for me.
Well, you know what? LaGuardia is the most expensive, but last year it was Newark. They were getting $28 for a beer.
Holy
I don't
mackerel.
think so.
All right, Peter Greenberg, we appreciate you being with us. We'll have you back again. Thanks.